For the nation, by the nation. Islam Alive Radio.
Assalamu alaikum listeners. Today is Saturday, 10th February 2024. The time is 3 p.m. South African time. I'm your host, Ashka Regal from Cape Town, South Africa. And this is the show, Liberation Education. I do have a co-host, Zaina Ali, but she informed me that she'll be going on a hiatus until the two of us have another discussion when we are available outside of guest talks. Shukran for being tuned to Islam Alive Radio. Remember, you may check us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where you can like, share, and subscribe. For any queries, email us islamaliveradio@gmail.com or send us a WhatsApp on +27 81 217 6012. That's +27 81 217 6012. A disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed by any guest or presenter of Islam Alive Radio are not necessarily the views of Islam Alive Radio. Right, previously on Liberation Education, we spoke on 5 chapters, one being Islamophobia Worldwide. We had guests such as Fawzia Abrams, who spoke on Women Within Network. We had our discussions, Zaina and I had a discussion on Muslim women representation and indigenous struggles. Lastly, with Zayd Ahmed as our guest, he spoke on his NGO, Youth for Humanity. Today, we are here with Aisha Hamdulay, who is a visibility and communications coordinator at Frontline Defenders. And her achievements, her journey leading up to this is phenomenal. I actually found out about her when adverts for the Department of Basic Education showed international scholarships, and those were circulating. And I scrolled to find that one of the alumni was a South African Muslim woman who earned a the Kader Asmal Fellowship in Ireland and studied at the University College of Dublin. So I was very impressed with all of this. But not only that, just yesterday, the Irish women's basketball team refused to shake hands with the Israeli team for the lineup when they were at the center for their anthems. And Ireland itself is one of the EU nations refusing to partner with Israel's apartheid, and they vowed to continue funding UNRWA, I believe. So just these levels of impact of social justice in where Aisha studied and a country of origin and her identity is just, I'd like to show admiration and acknowledgement for that, as well as share with our listeners her story, just broadening slowly to an international lens. So I'm very excited. Assalamu alaikum, Aisha.
Wa alaikum salam, Ashika. Thank you so much for the nice introduction.
Yeah, literally, this is such an honor for me to have you here. I only gave the audience a little taste of who you are, but that is why I wanted to have you on the show personally today to share it for yourself. Firstly, tell us a bit about yourself, where you are from, where you are now, and what you do.
Sure. So I'm originally from Cape Town. Cape Town is my home. I was born there. I grew up there. I've been living and working in Dublin in Ireland for the last 3 years, or 2 to 3 years. I work at an NGO called Frontline Defenders, and basically what we do is we provide support to human rights defenders who are basically activists who work non-violently for human rights. And so we provide support to activists who are at risk because of the human rights work. I've been working in human rights for the last 8 years. I have worked at the Women's Legal Center in Cape Town and in Ndifuna Akwazi, which is a urban justice land and housing NGO. I studied politics, international relations, and when I did my master's in in Ireland that did humanitarian action and international development. So I've got a passion for human rights and social justice. And yeah, I try to bring that into all aspects of my life.
That is amazing. Your whole profile is just super impressive. And when I read through the profile, and you mentioned how becoming involved in contributing to South Africa's needs for transformation regarding land and social economic justice, which is basically what we speak about on the show, and why your perspective is incredibly important, especially as an academic like yourself that has been so far in the international scope. You're an alumni for the Department of Basic Education International Scholarships. I just want to see, what did you think of the experience moving from South Africa to the University College of Dublin, and to experience these Irish maybe culture or this new landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the personal side, like first I was moving to a different country, so it was first a shock to the system. But once you settle in, it was it's been a great experience. The Irish people are really lovely people. They're really friendly, and I think that we share this affinity with Ireland because we have similar struggles in terms of Ireland being colonized, having been colonized by the British. They still got, the ongoing land struggle with Northern Ireland, where the land is still under the control of the British. So there is that great affinity with Irish people. There's this solidarity that you feel with them. So I felt very comfortable, I think, when I came here and living here. And it's interesting because I had always wanted to do my master's in the UK. It's always seen as like prestigious to go and do your master's in the UK. But I'm really happy in hindsight that I ended up in Ireland because it's been such an enriching experience just because of those historical considerations and the shared history. Yeah.
Definitely. Before I go on to your studies, you mentioned masters, but before I go on to that, I'd like to pick on what you said about the similarities, the connection, because in the DBE website it mentioned how you felt a connection with Ireland and its similarities with South Africa's history. So maybe can you speak further on this and its relevance to today's times, what we are seeing now in the news and the ICJ and all these, indigenous struggles that are happening around the world, your opinion on these?
Yeah, well, Ireland has always been very strongly and very openly pro-Palestine, and again, that's, I think, because of the shared history and the shared struggle in terms of land and colonialism and domination, and similarly with South Africa. So it's not surprising that that the solidarity with Palestine is so strong. So it's marches and campaigns and things that happen over here are significant, and the public puts a lot of pressure on the government as well to kind of adopt those stances internationally and within the EU. Obviously, when it comes to within the EU, there's more conflict because majority of the EU has been pro-Palestine, whereas Ireland and, for example, Spain are one of the few countries that have been pro-Palestine. So it's also balancing for Ireland as a state and as a country. It's been, balancing their position within the EU, but also national considerations of what their stance is on Palestine. Yeah, so it's been interesting, but it's been nice to see how unapologetic and strong the public opinion is in favor of Palestine.
it definitely is to see Ireland and Spain, all these EU nations taking a stance on issues like these, and the similarities within the histories, especially for Ireland and its support in ending apartheid. It's just this triple modality of social justice, with being South African and understanding the Irish perspectives, just solidarity during these times for Palestine. These levels of social justice is incredible. And now on to your mention of your masters, which I'm really excited to speak about, because it's just your whole profile is amazing. So tell us about your studies and your achievements. You mentioned the University of College of Dublin, the humanitarian action, and your research, what you've achieved in the throughout.
So my master's was in humanitarian action and international development, and basically that was studying the system of humanitarian aid and development organizations, and from the A to Z of that whole system and organizations and everything. I work in human rights now. I don't work in the humanitarian sector, which it's quite different. Humanitarian work there's obviously an element of human rights to it, but humanitarian work it's quite distinct from human rights work, in that it's urgent response. It's responding to urgent situations. And basic needs, essentially, whereas human rights it's broader and it's more long term. I enjoyed my master's. It was a good program. It was well rounded and everything, but I actually was disillusioned after the master's by the humanitarian sector, because it felt like, for me, it was a big system, and it is a big system of neo-colonialism, in the sense that it's just another way of the West kind of controlling the global South, and making the global South dependent on them. So I felt very disillusioned, actually, by the humanitarian sector, as much as there's a need for it, in terms of who controls funding and who decides what goes where, etc., etc. So after that, I actually decided I wanted to go back, or to stay within the realm of human rights, just because of those discomforts that I felt with the humanitarian sector in the West. My thesis was on land in South Africa. My honors thesis, as well as my master's thesis, was on land. So my master's thesis was looking at the rule of law in South Africa in relation to land rights. And so my academic research on land centers mostly around comparing, or to looking at the land question in South Africa, and examining essentially how far we have come, or rather how we failed in that sense, in terms of addressing injustices and redistribution, and looking at it through a lens of transitional justice. Which transitional justice essentially is looking at how a society transitions after a conflict, after a war, after a system of oppression. So, my research looks essentially at land rights in relation to transitional justice and transformation.
I definitely want to speak on first what you mentioned about the difference between human rights versus humanitarian action, because we actually don't often notice the difference, or we don't question it. And it's very interesting for you to mention human rights, how that is long term, whereas humanitarian, it's urgent response, and your response to that neo-colonialism and the West over the global South. Because when you spoke about that, it reminded me of UNRWA and organizations in the West, and how we don't usually question these systems, who is distributing and how it's distributed, and how at the end of the day, Western or white supremacy powers are still that have that hierarchy, I would say, of power. and also your thesis, how you mentioned South Africa's transactional justice and land rights. We didn't actually speak on land rights in our show yet, but it is also another important topic of dispossession of land to the redistribution of land, and how the government or people in power try to repair from that transition after apartheid. And even in different countries like Palestine now, what's happening with the distribution of lands, or the dispossession of lands, or African nations as well that have been having displaced lands from colonial powers. Even today, it's that systematic systematic racism and decolonialization that's still taking place today. And just to mention that in your thesis, how it relates to the times in 2024, we should always take that into account.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at the time now is 15:16. So what I'm going to do is we will be taking a short break, and after the break we'll be continuing with Liberation Education, Chapter 6. The ads will first be played, accompanied by qasidas with many languages this time. I'm adding songs or tunes of different languages accompanying Arabic, just like as a testament to this international mix of culture, artistry and identity. So the first song would be from a Palestinian artist, Saint Levant. It's a mix of English and French. So sit back, relax, and we'll see you in a beat.
The most successful journeys are the ones in which we are most connected with ourselves. My mission is to create a space where people can feel safe to honor their emotions and channel that energy to become the best versions of themselves. So join me, Fatima Juma Jacobs, if you want to dial it back a notch after a long week of being in a robotic state, and prepare for the weekend by reconnecting with yourself and being present in the moment in your body and mind. Every Thursdays between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. on Islam Alive Radio, 1 hour dedicated to your personal growth, well-being and mental strength. Feel your feelings, think your thoughts, honor your emotions. Consciously me, wherever you are, be there completely.
Wallahi, it ain't girls like you out here in the West. I know I've been away, but I'm coming back home. No need to stress, baby. All I know is to be Palestinian is to always rep where you come from. Except when you're online at the customs. Told her she can meet me up in London. She let me cause I came from Gaza with love. But I feel like it's once that I go back. From Gaza with love. If I had it their way, we would never go back. From Gaza with love, baby. فلسطين أحسن ساعي وبنت بلادي عجباني فضلكم احكوا مش سامع. Continuez à parler, on vous entend pas. 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 Somebody tell Bella Hadid, let's change out to Abdul Hamid. Now I mean to come off too strong, بس الأصل فلاحي, I'm planting the seeds. Yeah, عيني, I could get you what you need, but I hate it when the texts go green. Do you miss me or did you leave, baby? Came from Gaza with love, but I feel like it's once that I go back. From Gaza with love, if they had it their way, we would never go back. From Gaza with love, baby. فلسطين أحسن ساعي وبنت بلادي عجباني فضلكم احكوا مش سامع. Continuez à parler, on vous entend pas. 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 Continuez à parler, on vous entend pas.
Greetings from Islam Alive Radio. The time now is 3:19 p.m. South African time. I'm Ashka Regal, the host for Liberation Education, here with Aisha Hamdulay. Before the break, we discussed Aisha's journey in the University College of Dublin and her studies and achievements, as well as the connection between Ireland and South Africa's history. And now we move on. Aisha, you also worked in the Women's Legal Center, and you also represented on radio, TV, and print, such as News 24, Daily Vox, IOL News. We'd like to know about this and some of your commentary for these different media, and as well as Women's Legal Center, what that is about.
Sure. The Women's Legal Center is as far as I know, to be the only feminist legal center, specifically dedicated to women's rights that offers free legal services. Their focus is on feminist litigation. So, looking at taking up cases where they can set precedents for essentially, advancing women's rights in different areas of law. So focus on human rights, and they've got different program areas. I believe they've expanded a little bit since I've left, and have added on a few different program areas. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's a feminist litigation center. I was working as the media and communications officer, so I was helping writing publications, statements, managing the social media, speaking to the press on different issues. If there was commentary that was needed on a case, I would provide commentary. So that's what the Women's Legal Center was about, and that's what I was doing. I think they do extremely important work for women in South Africa, for marginalized and vulnerable women especially. For example, they do a lot of work on land. They do land and housing work. They do violence against women. They do labor rights. They also, I believe, have started working with human rights defenders. They do really important work, and they've been around also for, I think, over 20 years.
That's incredible. The Women's Legal Center, how they actually offer free legal services, and it's a litigation center that speaks about all these different issues that are important for women, like the labor rights and the human rights defenders, And you also represented on radio, TV, and commentary for these news outlets. Can you share with us some of those publications, or yes, those prints?
The publications were the opinion pieces that were published in the media were just on. And one was on sexual harassment in the workplace. The WLC has done quite a bit of work on that. Other ones were on land and housing, and it was on various cases that were happening at the time. I do remember there was one case when I was working there also where I think there was a Muslim woman that was asked to remove a scarf at our Tambo. We were working on that case, and I was commenting on that in the media, about constitutional rights and stuff. And then related, there was also the case of, I can't remember the lady's name, but the woman who worked in the South African Defence Force, who also faced issues with wearing a hijab. So there was quite a wide range of issues that I was working on at the time. I think because WLC is the only essentially dedicated center working on women's rights in relation to the law and litigation. There's always different issues coming in every day. We have come a long way in South Africa, but we still have a long way to go. especially I would say with violence against women, gender-based violence, and then the cross between sometimes customary law and the constitution, and yeah, there's so many different aspects, so many different types of intersections going on that we can speak about all day, really.
Definitely. I actually want to speak on that mention of intersectionality. I was actually on a call with the African Climate Alliance on a Zoom call, and they spoke about this intersectionality of injustices. They spoke about larger systems of oppression that has to do with not only climate change, but classism and racism and sexism, the patriarchy, this oppressive power systems that are all interconnected. And when I read the Women Legal System Center and your articles on women's rights, Muslim rights, and all these levels of injustices, it's very to understand that solidarity and understand those injustices that interconnect is so powerful and really important to recognize that intimidation, that victimization, or how you mentioned in one article, the lack of accountability that people in power use to uphold these injustices.
Yeah, I mean, intersectionality is something that is, the concept of it, that I feel has only become relevant in the last 5 to 10 years, but it's a very important concept in understanding injustice and understanding someone's lived experience. And I feel like it's such a game changer when you get someone to understand that concept. And I feel like we have to look at things through the lens of intersectionality in order to properly understand how someone is experiencing injustice. Because injustice is layered, it's stacked, it's not just, it's not a straight line. There's so many different elements. There's so many different elements to it, and they impact each other. So we have to understand, and especially when looking at the law as well, you have to look at it through the lens of intersectionality. Otherwise, you'll never understand properly how someone is experiencing an injustice and how it impacts on the different aspects of the identity.
Exactly that. Because, to understand one struggle is to also recognize and empathize with another struggle. So the same system that affects one group of marginalized may also affect another, and that's why it's important to come together after this, finding out about this intersectionality and these injustices, to build a solidarity and counter narrative against that.
Yeah.
And the last question before another break is, you are working for Frontline Defenders, and you mentioned briefly about what this initiative was about, as well as your job as a visibility and communications coordinator. So tell us about Frontline Defenders and what your job entails for this initiative.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, Frontline Defenders provides support to human rights defenders, activists who are at risk as a result of the human rights work. We do this in a number of different ways, ranging from protection campaign support, visibility support, digital security, physical security, grants for relocation. If somebody's in danger and needs to move from one place to the other, we provide capacity building workshops, providing training on how to essentially create a security plan for yourself, that kind of thing. So I work on the visibility and communications team. I work on giving visibility to human rights defenders, so getting their stories and their cases out there in the media, using communications for advocacy. I also host a podcast through Frontline Defenders called Rights on the Line. So interviewing different human rights defenders about their cases and their stories, getting their stories out there, getting it to reach global audiences, helping and consulting with them on campaigns and just amplifying their cases and their stories. So yeah, that's what I do in my aspect of my work. Yeah, it's great. We work globally, and so our reach is it's quite wide. We work all over the world. I've had the privilege of meeting and working with activists from literally all corners of the world in all 5 continents. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yes, I did see that, and I find that really amazing. I think there was one a few days ago when you were having the talk with Tara Huska on the front lines of resistance against, the land, environment, and indigenous rights issues. And this was after we spoke about indigenous struggles. So to me, this was like, incredible once I researched on it. And your human rights defenders in Guatemala and Kazakhstan, Bosnia, Iran, so all these different places of historically marginalized people that you speak on. It's really inspiring. And also on top of that, you are a creative, so a photographer and a poet. How do you integrate creativity into your social justice projects as, human rights defender and a creative?
So I'm quite a passionate creative person. I used to do a lot more photography than I do now, which I want to start up again. But like in the day, I used to do some kind of social justice projects. There was one that I did where I was trying to kind of amplify women of color by showing I think it's a bit better now, but I think maybe 5-10 years ago we would still see fair people. Like there was a lot of colorism where we would judge beauty by how light somebody's skin is, and that the darker someone is, we'd see them, the media would see them, or society would see them as less beautiful. And so I did a photography project, trying to counter that narrative, that the fairer your skin is, the more beautiful you are. That was one thing that I did, and I've been writing poetry for probably 15 years, but I only started sharing that poetry last year. So I started finding spaces here in Dublin where I could share my poetry, and I joined this space called Black Tones, and it's basically a space for people of color to come together and to share their work. And yeah, a lot of my work is centered around themes of power and social justice, intergenerational trauma, lots of things that are related to being a person of color, I would say. So my goal and my objective with my poetry for this year is to write a lot more, to share a lot more. Yeah. I think the arts are an important space for social justice, and that it should never be discounted as a powerful tool for advocacy. We always think, not always, but sometimes the idea is that art can't change the world, but art can change the world. You can change someone's mind with your art, and that is a big step. That's a big tool. That's a big step that you can use. Art can change minds, yeah.
That is so cool. But yes, just your poetry and your photography, that idea of colorism and that counter narrative, that crucial word counter narrative that we speak on, that integrates creativity in social justice, and the projects that you did. I also read something when you posted about the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival back in 2023, and when you collaborated with Smashing Times International Centre to make a dramatic theatre performance of 4 human rights defenders, and how you integrated that, the theatre, the arts, into social justice. And it's a crucial reminder for us that even though the arts are like a special, specific space, it's still crucial and important to bring up human rights as well. And yes, I think we've spoken so much. We'll be taking another short break, and after the break we will continue with Liberation Education Chapter 6. We'll play the ad again. The next artist that will be played, it's a song Manak Ula Meni. I'm so sorry for saying this wrong, but it's by Inez. It's a mix of languages, Arabic, Dutch and French. So chill, rest well, take a breather. We'll see you in a bit.
Islam Live Radio is sponsored by Al Muqeed Foundation South Africa. Would you like to donate cash or kind towards feeding our children and people? Contact the following number, +27 66 33 99 775. Al Muqeed Foundation South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, serving the humanity.
Mellow J. منك ولا مني ما بقيش هاممني سيدي لا تعاتبني اللي بيني وبينك سالة لا منجيك ما تجيني غير سير وخليني بكيت لي عيني درتي في قلبي حالة اللي تحبك زيد منك أنا يجوني مار عمرك ما تيقى قلبي في قلبي صبار من اللي تحبك زيد منك أنا يجوني مار عمرك ما تيقى قلبي في قلبي صبار منك ولا مني تسلق في الليل tijd dat ik nog werkte met mijn hart dat je heel de wereld voor mij had je zit nog veel te diep in mij ik liet je spelen met mijn hart en nu gebruik ik hem nooit meer nooit meer nooit meer Habibti inti à mon amour notre vie c'est pas les affaires si tu ne veux ensemble pour toujours me fais-nous de l'ail et des gens pour éloigner les vautours c'est un autre temps qui les joue Habibti inti à mon amour notre vie c'est pas les affaires inti في حياتي كل شيء غدرتي ونسيتي كل شيء كنتي بحياتي كل شيء غدرتي ونسيتي كل شيء وما ربحتي والو 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 ونسيتي كل شيء كل شيء كل شيء وما ربحتي والو 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 ونسيتي كل شيء كل شيء كل شيء
Greetings again from Islam Live Radio. The time now is 3:39 p.m. South African time. I'm Aisha Regal, the host for Liberation Education. I'm back here with Aisha Hamdulay, and we have previously discussed on the work that Aisha has done in Women's Legal Center, what they're about, as well as her publications on different rights issues like women's rights, Muslim women's rights, Muslim rights, so all these levels of intersectional injustices. And we also spoke on her being a creative photographer and poet, and how you can integrate creativity in social justice, as well as her job as a visibility and communications coordinator at Frontline Defenders. That was a mouthful. But continuing on our discussion, Aisha, you've also traveled a lot. So tell us about your travels and the importance of, engaging with these different cultures and communities and the eye-opening lessons that you experienced while traveling.
Yeah, I mean, I think traveling is the one thing that really just enriches you and teaches you so much without you actively doing anything. It's just going and experiencing and immersing yourself in another country or another culture can just teach you so much. Just seeing how different people and different cultures live, and reflecting back to the fact that Allah has created us in these different tribes and nations, and created with differences for a reason, so that we can learn from each other, and that we were created with diversity for a reason. So I always like to think back to I think it's the hadith where the Prophet encourages us to travel, and we encourage to do that for a reason, because when you're so obviously traveling is a privilege because it costs money, and I'm always deeply appreciative of the fact that I'm granted the opportunity to travel, but we all have worldviews which are impacted by the things that happen around us, that impacted by our surroundings. And when you're in one place, your worldview is limited in that sense. When you step out into different cultures and you see that people do things, you're doing the same thing but in a different way, that there's 10 different ways to do the same thing or to express the same thing, your worldviews will broaden. And I think that's one big learning experience that I have gained throughout my travels. Another thing also is you get to reflect on, you look at what's important to you in your life, and when you start traveling to other cultures and you see, for example, in Southeast in Asia, people live a very simple life, a very non-capitalist, lots. I mean, outside of the mainland, but a lot of the culture is removed from that capitalist culture. People are very content with having a simple job that just pays the bills and I can eat every day, and that person is happy living their life like that until they pass. And then you come to the West, and it's this notion of you must achieve, you must gain, you must make money, you must be successful, it's a rat race. And so then you start to question, but like, what's the point of that? What are you chasing? So it's things like that where the traveling and immersing yourself in these different cultures makes you reflect on what is important to you and why is that important to you, and what is it actually gonna get me in this life or in the next life? Is it gonna get me anyway? So it's things like that the benefit, I think the benefit of traveling, I would say, is that it makes you reflect a lot on yourself and your values and your principles, why they are a certain way and whether they should be changing.
Yes, this idea, your perspectives as someone who has seen different cultures, different communities, different countries, as a woman and as a Muslim fighting against these larger systems of oppression, questioning this capitalist societies, as well as because you have that opinion, this perspective from traveling, is incredibly crucial. Because I love how you mentioned how the Prophet and Hadith, because we always encourage to be open-minded, to be educated, to learn, and open our mind to other people. And just your travels when you went to Croatia, Lithuania, Belgium, Istanbul, all these different places, because of that you have a wider, I'd say, knowledge of these different systems, of these different cultures, and just perspectives. And also, when I was scrolling through, but I saw how you had Say No to Amazon. It was one of the movements around the time in which you are vocal on when they were building their headquarters on indigenous land. And I wanted to actually ask you, what is your opinion now during the boycotts, where Amazon and other corporations on the occupation on indigenous lands? How does that make you feel now after being vocal back in 2022?
I mean, I always support indigenous people in their right to in defending their land and self-determination and everything. And now that I can see this from a global scale where I work, it's happening all over the world, where you have big corporations and big money pushing indigenous people off their lands, or giving them little to no compensation and saying, no, this was fair, we did compensate them. And the harassment and the targeting and the killings that people experience as a result of defending the land, I will always feel the same way about it. It's wrong, and it's the right of those people and indigenous people and people who belong to the land to defend that and to fight for their rights and to fight for their land. Unfortunately, the money talks in today's world, and it is difficult to fight those big players and those big systems. But there are lots of success stories as well, as much as there are sad stories of people just being killed off. It happened in South Africa as well with Mamfikile. There are also success stories, and so you kind of have to hold on to those and hope that we can strengthen those systems of resistance against that. We'll always stand with indigenous people in defending their land. Yeah.
Definitely, these conversations of multiple dimensions of abuse of power, like from larger corporations, like you mentioned, have always been supporting this, because at that time that you were supporting, they were building its headquarters on indigenous San and Khoi land back in 2022. And the fact that this boycott now for supporting Israel, it just shows how I think you mentioned this before, but it's enshrined in the same system of capitalism and exploitation for wealth and power at the expense of native populations. So when we spoke about that intersectionality of injustices, it's like all connected, from the capitalist systems to what's happening in Africa, to what's happening in Palestine, to what's happening in Congo, all these places. And that's why it's so important to have that, again, that solidarity talk and questioning those systems.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Cape Town in December and I see that the Amazon building is almost done. So that's very sad to see. So, on the M5 and that's what you're gonna essentially be seeing now, is that's gonna be Amazon site. So it's very sad, and I think especially with the Khoi San in South Africa, it's a forgotten history, and it's really sad. Because, I mean, some people, you can refer to it as a genocide that once happened of the San and the Khoi. So I feel like it is a forgotten history in South Africa, where it should actually be more prominent. It should be, we need to be speaking about it more, and we need to be giving resources to that.
It's important to mention the forgotten histories and to bring back those histories as a counter narrative, to speak up against those that silenced or erased those different communities. And I think the that is a good way to go on to the next break, because we only have 10 minutes left. But yes, I will be playing one more ad for you, and along with this one last song by Maghrib Gang. This tune is in English, Arabic and German. Then we will be continuing with Liberation Education after the break.
Southern Hill Gas and Hardware. If you'd like to purchase any size gas tank or even refill your gas tank, needing any screw or hammer and some sort of building equipment, visit Southern Hill Gas and Hardware in Southern Hill Drive, Lavender Hill. Islam Alive Radio is sponsored by Southern Hill Gas and Hardware, Cape Town, South Africa.
Fire back, gang, Montana. You know what it is when you hear that. Judy on the beat. عبد القادر يا ابو علم داق الحال عنيا اذا وحاليها ابو علم سدي رفعليا عبد القادر يا ابو علم داق الحال عنيا اذا وحاليها ابو علم سدي رفعليا وبس في بلومو اودا بلاتا Estağfurullah ama hasılla Narkotrafikante Osman Pia Lambo, Ferrari, Porsche Carrera AK in der Hand wie in Favelas Deshalb jammt aus Italien Den VIP Die Kohle durch Vitamin Genau wie meine Richard Mille From Grape Street, lit blue face on an 8 feet. Money stacked up by 8 feet. How you win? G's on your body, dapper then. Young boys buying wave, man, we buying land. And your favorite rapper, he's a fan. Wallahi, top it NY like Nori. Closet, mix like Safari. This boy got a lot like a pit bull. Talking ice water, got a wrist full. Whips got a lot, cribs got a lot, drip got a lot. Montana, ربي بلادي بيا يا نادي كريم بنية خليتني في حيرة يا العشرة طويلة ربي بلادي بيا يا نادي كريم بنية خليتني في حيرة يا العشرة طويلة عبد القادر يا ابو علم داق الحال عنيا اذا وحاليها ابو علم سني رفعليا
Greetings again from Islam Alive Radio. The time now is 3:53 p.m. South African time. I'm Aisha Hamdulay, the host for Liberation Education. Again here with Aisha Hamdulay, in which we discussed her travels around the world, how she saw these different cultures and communities, the lessons she learned. And we also spoke about her being vocal on corporations and the what's happening with the boycotts now and the land distributions to these large corporations and abuse of power. And to just sum it all up and to end it all up, I would like to ask, you've spoken up on, like I mentioned before, intersectionality of injustices like racism, classism, sexism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, all these different levels of injustices. And just how are we as youth able to speak on so many barriers, or I'd say discrimination at once, like you do in all these different spheres that you spoke about to us now? How are young people like myself supposed to achieve that?
I mean, honestly, it's so easy to speak out these days. Like, social media is what everyone uses now to spread information. So it's really as simple as using the platforms that are available to you to share the right messages, and contribute to changing the narrative in terms of whatever issue it is that you're advocating for, So if you look at if you look at the narratives around Palestine and the crisis now since October 7th, the role that social media has played is actually phenomenal. I feel like it's surpassed the power of traditional media in changing the narrative and changing people's minds, and getting evidence out there, getting the real stories out there and showing what's actually happening. So it's really as simple as first just sharing things on your story, sharing things on your page, and um, reading the right things as well. Also not only what you're sharing, but what you are taking in to make sure that you are taking the right information in. But there's so many different ways to get involved and to speak out. There's youth collectives, there's so many social justice groups. Elections are coming up now, politics and social justice are intrinsically intertwined. So it's about being an active citizen as well, looking into which party do you align with. Is there a party that you align with? Get involved with that party if you align with them. Yeah, so go to protests, go to youth meetings, get involved, surround yourself with people who have the same mindset as you, who are interested in the same things and want to speak out. Use your art to speak out. Use your art for social justice. There's really countless ways of spreading the message, of spreading good work, of doing good work. I don't think there's ever an excuse for anybody to say I don't have time, or I don't know how, or I don't have the means. I think just a poor excuse. So
Shukran, yes, definitely. You're 100% right. And just to end everything up, lastly, what advice or final words do you have for our listeners or aspiring youth activists and even academics in the field that wish to speak on these matters? Your final words.
sure. I think building on to what I mentioned now, just don't be afraid. Use your voice. Use your voice, use your power, and use your privilege to spread the right messages. We all not we have, some of us have more power, privilege than others, and it's important to recognize that power and that privilege, and to use it in a way that we can contribute to making society better. And to be an activist doesn't mean that you only have to be working in human rights. You can be a doctor, you can be an engineer, you can be an accountant, and you can still be an activist. You can still use your voice to spread the right message in your respective circles. You can advocate for social justice within the sector that you're working in. If you look at doctors, there's so many issues that they have going on with the department, etc., etc. So being an activist can be a full-time job, but it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It should be something that's embedded in whatever it is that you're doing. That you must, like the ayah in the Quran says, stand up for injustice, even if it's against your parents. So it's not something that's reserved for people who want to do it as a full-time job. It's there for everyone to stand up and to do. So my message, I would say, is that must be embedded into your everyday life. Wherever you're going, wherever you're seeing, when you see an injustice happening, as a Muslim, you should be the person to stand up to that and to do something about it. Yeah.
Shukran so much, Aisha. Your words are so inspiring and so empowering. In fact, you are the embodiment of all the podcasts that Zaina and I have had on liberation education up to now. So just this Islamophobia worldwide, Muslim women representation, indigenous struggle, just it's such an honor to have you here and the opportunity to interview you live. So shukran so much for joining me and our listeners on Islam Alive Radio today.
Thank you, Ashika. It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me. And it's important work that you and Zaina are doing. So, yeah, I wish you all the best in your future shows and your chapters. And I hope that your message reaches far and wide.
Shukran, Aisha, and to our listeners, shukran for listening in on Aisha Hamdulay and Liberation Education. Before I end off, I need to mention to my fellow Cape Townians, my fellow South Africans, that there is going to be a match tomorrow for Athlone Stadium, in which the Palestinian team, the soccer team, is playing against us. So we need there to be a huge turnout. The way you can get these tickets to go into Athlone Stadium and support the players, you go to Ticket Pro online and you book tickets for Football for Humanity. Just search Football for Humanity or Tickets Pro, Ticket Pro, and you will be able to book these tickets at Athlone Stadium, 11th February 2024, and the match is at 17:00. It's at 5 p.m. So book it now. Shukran so much, my listeners, and to Aisha Hamdulay for joining us today. And I'll end off with a few more qasidas with different languages, English and Arabic, French and Arabic, so all these different languages, and I'll mention the artists at the end. So sit back, relax, and shukran for joining us on Chapter 6 of Liberation Education.
Montana. You know what it is, we know what it is.
حبيبي يا نور العين يا ساكن خيالي عاشق بقالي سنين ولا غيرك في بالي حبيبي يا نور العين يا ساكن خيالي عاشق بقالي سنين ولا غيرك في بالي حبيبي 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 يا نور العين 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 يا ساكن خيالي
Montana. Habibi, my baby. She said, wallahi, she never leave me. I said, hey, Habibti, hello. In a drop head with a tan one. In a mansion by the beach. Belly dancing, no sleep. Mouth-east Belize, catching tan. My brother said he's a Hayawan. Back forth, same night, no one know about it. Moroccan green passport, King Lancelot. Yeah, we got the bang, got the bang, got the bang. One time for chinks, my Habibi.
حبيبي 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 يا نور العين 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 ساكن خيالي
Burning up, I ain't giving up. Take it to the top, making money, we gon' never leave. Pass me that rock, forward in a cup. Baby, make it drop, shake your body right in front of me. Ain't never gonna be waiting on you. Pockets full of gold in the zone, you can find it. I'm thinking I can spend it on you. Hala habibi, ya noor al-ayn.
ساكن
ساكن خيالي.
J'aurais supporté les larmes qui me traversent le corps et qui font couler mes larmes. J'aurais supporté les balles, dissocier le bien du mal, les yeux recouverts d'un voile. Mais j'ai su voir dans ton âme, j'y ai vu de nombreuses vagues et des plantes qui se fanent. Donc j'ai dû briser le vase qui contenait ton esprit. Ya Habibi, tu es tombé comme la pluie. T'as déboulé dans ma petite vie, dans ma ville comme un ovni. Puis t'es parti comme le jour qui laisse place à la nuit. Et quand t'es parti, ton absence a laissé place à l'ennui.
هقول لك كلمة واحدة أبرك من كلام كتير. ما بعرفش أكون رومانسي لكن عليكي بغير. مش بثبت لك إني جامد ولا عايز أبان تقيل. أنا بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي تعالي لي، بناديكي أنا هنا، بناديكي تعالي لي، بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي أنا هنا، بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي يا حبيبي.
Ya Habibi, tu es tombé comme la pluie. T'as déboulé dans ma petite vie, dans ma ville comme un ovni. Puis t'es parti comme le jour qui laisse place à la nuit. Et quand t'es parti, ton absence a laissé place à l'ennui.
مالي أنا ومالها، مالها خليها في حالها، حالها مش هجر شكلها ما أنا عارف إنها هترجع تاني بمزاجها. حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي، حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي.
J'aurais supporté les larmes qui me traversent le corps et qui font couler mes larmes. J'aurais supporté les balles, dissocier le bien du mal, les yeux recouverts d'un voile. Mais j'ai su voir dans ton âme, j'y ai vu de nombreuses vagues et des plantes qui se fanent. Donc j'ai dû briser le vase qui contenait ton esprit. Ya Habibi, tu es tombé comme la pluie. T'as déboulé dans ma petite vie, dans ma ville comme un ovni. Puis t'es parti comme le jour qui laisse place à la nuit. Et quand t'es parti, ton absence a laissé place à l'ennui.
هقول لك كلمة واحدة أبرك من كلام كتير. ما بعرفش أكون رومانسي لكن عليكي بغير. مش بثبت لك إني جامد ولا عايز أبان تقيل. أنا بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي تعالي لي، بناديكي أنا هنا، بناديكي تعالي لي، بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي أنا هنا، بناديكي يا حبيبي، بناديكي يا حبيبي.
Ya Habibi, tu es tombé comme la pluie. T'as déboulé dans ma petite vie, dans ma ville comme un ovni. Puis t'es parti comme le jour qui laisse place à la nuit. Et quand t'es parti, ton absence a laissé place à l'ennui.
حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي، حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي يا حبيبي،
Ya Habibi, ya Habibi,
يا حبيبي يا حبيبي،
ya Habibi, ya Habibi.
يا حبيبي يا حبيبي.
مش هنكمل انا عارف من الاول، مهما نطول هتكون اخرتها ايه. كنت متعود ان اسمع وافوت، بس المرة دي قلبي هدوس عليه.
تغير اللي في راسي ايزي العيش بلا بيك خليك ناسي. الايام بتدور توريك عندي اللي في راسي ايزي العيش بلا بيك خليك ناسي، خليك ناسي. انساي باللي شي نهار عرفتيني. انساي يلا باي وباي انا ماشي ليك يلا باي. انساي باللي شي نهار عرفتيني. انساي يلا باي وباي انا ماشي ليك يلا باي.
انسى انك شفتيني وعرفتيني واتقابلنا. على فكرة ناسي اسم كل يوم اللي فيه اتكلمنا. لو رحت قلت لهم اني كنت في يوم حبيبك محدش هيصدقك، كله هيمشي ويسيبك. سلام مش هسلم، كلام مش هتكلم. بتلعبي على مين؟ الاسطورة والمعلم. قمة الغباء انك تفتكر انك في بالي ولا في خيالي. من الاخر
انساي باللي شي نهار عرفتيني. انساي يلا باي وباي بلا بيك انا عايش حياتي كيما بغيت، غير سيري وخليني. النيبو ديالي ماشي ديالك، صعيب تكوني بحالي فاليدي، حالي فاليدي، حالي فاليدي. ما تسنينيش نكون معاك، تعمرني درت اللي بغيتي، درت اللي بغيتي، درت اللي بغيتي.
دي حاجة تجن ليل نهار بتزن تزن، انا هرمي التليفون واسيبها ترن ترن ترن. دي حاجة تجن ليل نهار بتزن تزن، انا هرمي التليفون واسيبها ترن ترن ترن.